During today's lesson, we will be discussing the classification of world Englishes, with a focus on Australian English. But before we get into that, let me give you a brief overview of how the English language has evolved over time. The objectives of these lessons are to recognize the changes the English language has exhibited throughout time, to learn briefly about Australian colonization history, to comprehend the implications for the community, social, political, and economic, and to discover the most remarkable features of Australian English. As you know, English is spoken all over the world and there are many varieties. This is a little bit of like a compilation of the history of the English language, but I'm just going to tell you the most important facts, which are that English has so many roots from Celtic, Roman and Greek, Germanic languages, such as Angles, Saxons, Jutes, and Frisians, French, and there has been so many transitions in English. We have the vowel shift, colonization, and as you know, English continues to spread. In Cratchit's model, we have the 3 circles of English from World English is 1985. We have the inner circle, which is English as a native language, and then outer circle, English as a second language, and finally the expanded circle, English as a foreign language. It is very important to understand a little bit of the history, and from the Aboriginal Australian history, we can mention that, well, there were 500 tribes, there were more than 200 Aboriginal languages, and well, people were displaced to different territories, and it impacted in social and also in their health. In 1788, thousands of convicts were exiled and also military personnel was sent to Australia. They came from different regions such as England, Scotland, Wales, and Ireland. Therefore, their English was also slightly different. That's when the dialect leveling occurred, and the variations were removed. According to the census of 2021, there are approximately 15.5 million people who speak English in Australia. The Australian English nowadays, there are 3 main varieties of English, of Australian English, which are the broad, general, and cultivated. We're gonna listen to some audios so that you can understand a little bit better what are the differences. This is the general English, the first one that you're going to hear.
Australian English is a little bit different in that it generally is broken into 3 varieties. So the broad Australian accent, the general Australian accent, and the cultivated Australian accent. Unlike...
To me, the general English sounds like the American. And then we're going to hear the broad.
Quite funny, I was in bed sleeping at 2 o'clock this morning. My wife comes in and says, oh, the shop's been, someone ran into the shop. And I said, oh, what? So I jumped out of bed and all I had...
So the broad English is very strong and nasal. And finally, we had the cultivated English.
And turn it on. It's a bit bougie. Bougie is the word that I've been using a lot lately, and I'm picking it up from my favourite British YouTubers, so I'll show you how to say it. Bougie, and it means a little bit twee and upper class and hoity-toity.
Well, as you can hear, it sounds like a British one. And then we have some features of the Australian English. They have some discourse markers very, very, very commonly used over there. Like, for example, if you say, would you like to go to the movies? They say, yeah, no. Would you like to go to the bar? No, yeah. And basically you're kind of confused because you don't understand if they're telling you yes or no. And then from the lexicon, we have that, well, they are very, let's say, creative when it comes to basically invent new phrases. And here we have some examples like drunk as a skunk, which means very drunk, scared shitless, which means very scared. And then using swear words is a common way for them to express. Examples of this, we have shithead, and we have the shed smart arms, and there is no grammar or spelling mistake in this spelling. And then if in fact the closer they feel to someone, the more likely they are to use swear words. An example of this is, if I have brains like yours, I'll ask for a refund. And finally, we have an intensifier they use a lot, which is bloody fast. Instead of saying very, very fast or really fast, they use the word bloody to make us understand that it's really, really important, let's say. Instead of saying it's a huge crocodile, they would say it's a bloody crocodile. Here we have some other features of the Australian English. Cure is going to become qua. Tour is going to become toi. In the Australian English, they don't use the article "t" when they are mentioning a place. And then here we have some differences in the spelling. I recommend you to watch this video and check the differences in pronunciation and vocabulary. And then I have the TB true or false. And here you just have to read the sentences and tell me if it's true or false, and you can stop the video later on to check the answers. Here are the answers, true or false. Those who cannot learn from history are doomed to repeat it. By George Santayana. And this template was downloaded from Sligo. And this is the bibliography. Thank you so much.